Discovered a hidden photo in an old painting, my incredible journey after inheriting nothing. Sarah's heart raced as she stood in the dusty attic of her late father's home. The beams of sunlight danced across the room, illuminating the threads of time that felt so tightly woven around her emotions. She had never expected to inherit anything meaningful after a father she barely knew had passed away. Yet here she was, staring at the old painting that hung in her childhood living room. Its colors had faded, much like her childhood memories of the man who had chosen to walk away. Curiosity ignited inside her, the painful fog of resentment giving way to a flicker of hope. She gently pulled the painting from the wall, dust enveloping her like the blanket of memories she had carried for years. As she turned it around, a small creak caught her attention. A hidden compartment at the back. With a burst of excitement, she pried it open to discover an old photograph of her father, laughing heartily beside a grinning military buddy adorned with the proud insignia of the Marine Corps. She felt her breath catch in her throat, the weight of her disdain beginning to lift. This wasn't just a photo, it was a glimpse into a life she had never allowed herself to understand. Her father's laughter, frozen in time, seemed to whisper stories of valor, friendship, and battles fought beyond the battlefield of her childhood memories. Maybe he wasn't just the man who had walked away, maybe he was the soldier behind the moments of joy. Clutching the photograph tightly, Sarah set out on a journey fueled by newfound curiosity and an urge to uncover her father's past. The close-knit town of Maplewood had its veterans, men who had seen the horrors of war yet wore the scars with stoic pride. Sitting in the local diner over coffee with the gray-haired locals, she listened to their stories of camaraderie forged in the heat of battle and the prejudices they faced when they returned home. Yet, as Sarah delved deeper, she was struck by an overwhelming conflict. A nursing scholarship offered by the very community that had turned its back on her father had crossed her path, a lifeline out of her struggles. How could she pursue her own ambition while feeling the weight of her father's unrecognized legacy tugging at her heart? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Bitterness bubbled up, especially during a heated confrontation with the local councilman, a man who epitomized the biases that had shadowed her father's return. Just as the delicate ties she had begun to weave with her community felt almost real, they snapped under pressure, leaving Sarah feeling betrayed once again. Yet amid the chaos, she tightened her grip on the photograph, its edges softening against her palms, reminding her of resilience and connection. Just as she felt clarity drawing near, an alarm blared through Maplewood. The local gathering place was engulfed in flames, chaos erupting as smoke filled the air, threatening to unravel the fragile ties she had begun to mend. Sarah stood frozen, the photograph still clasped in her hand, heart racing with a single question echoing in her mind: would she step forward, confront the complex legacy of her father, and fight for the community he once longed to belong to? The answer loomed before her, a moment that could reshape everything she believed about family, forgiveness, and the legacy of love. Sarah shook off her stupor, adrenaline pulsing through her veins. The flames roared, consuming the wood and the memories that hung in the air like a choking fog. People spilled out of nearby buildings, faces painted with shock and fear. She dropped the photograph into her pocket, heart pounding as she wrestled with her next move. "Help! Over here," a voice cried out from the crowd. It belonged to Mrs. Jenkins, the elderly widow who lived alone on the corner. Panic twisted Sarah's gut. She couldn't do nothing while there were lives at stake. With renewed urgency, she dashed toward the flames, heedless of the way they crackled ominously. Her own fears felt small in comparison to the immediate threat facing her community. As she neared the building, she saw thick dark smoke billowing out of the windows, the heat radiating toward her like a fiery embrace. "Sarah! Wait!" A familiar voice called. It was Jake, a high school acquaintance and local firefighter, barreling past her toward the chaotic scene. He glanced back, his brow furrowed with concern. "You shouldn't be here. Get back." But she couldn't retreat. Not now. With a determined breath, she pressed forward. "We can't let anyone get left behind," she shouted, the push of her father's strength stirring courage inside her. Jake hesitated, torn between his duty and concern for her safety. "Get to safety. I'll deal with this." "No." Sarah shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "You need help. I can do this." For a moment, disbelief shadowed Jake's eyes, but then he saw the fierce resolve etched on her face. "Fine, but stay close and listen to me." He turned his attention back to the fire, eyes scanning the building. "Anyone inside? We have to evacuate them." Together, they ventured through the gasping smoke, putting the haze of their shared history aside. With each step deeper into the building, Sarah could feel the heat wrapping around her, clamoring for her attention. Her heart raced, not just from the fear of what could happen, but from the vivid recollections of her father's bravery. The man she had once deemed a coward now felt closer than ever. "Over here," came a hoarse voice from the back. It was a young man, probably in his 20s, trapped behind a fallen beam. "Hold on," Jake yelled, rushing to the man's side. Sarah followed, adrenaline pushing her beyond the limits she once thought defined her. Together, they pried the beam aside, his screams mingling with the crackle of burning wood. "Let us go," she urged, their former rivalries forced aside by the primal need to survive. As they dragged him out, Sarah's thoughts flickered to the photograph crumpled in her pocket. It was more than just a keepsake now, it was a reminder of what her father could have been, what he chose to be. Perhaps she too could rewrite her narrative. The trio stumbled out into the fresh air, collapsing onto the grass, gasping for breath. The beauty of the day felt stark against the chaos behind them. Friends and neighbors rushed forward, gathering around like lifelines materializing amid the wreckage of her past. Sarah looked at Jake, their hands blackened from smoke, foreheads glistening with sweat. "We did it." He grinned, a genuine spark of admiration in his eyes. "You're braver than you think, Sarah." But as they shared that moment, the biting realization hit her this was only the beginning. She still had more to discover about her father's legacy and how to confront the very community that had pushed him away. With flames in the distance flickering against the blue sky, Sarah knew she had a role to play beyond this day. As sirens echoed in the background, and with the photo of her father still safe in her pocket, she felt the first inklings of determination take hold. Where would she go next? What other secrets and tragedies awaited her as she sought to connect the past with the present? Only time would tell. As the sirens wove their mournful tune into the air, Sarah felt a rush of emotions flooding her. She looked around, shocked faces mingling with relief among the townspeople. They had pulled a life from the fiery depths, but was it enough to bring back the dwindling connections that had frayed over the years? Her heart ached, remembering how her past felt like a chasm between her and the community she had grown up in. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, brushing a hand across his forehead, smearing soot and sweat. His voice was steady, but deep concern painted his brow. "Yeah, I'm fine," she lied instinctively, the weight of unspoken truths resting heavily on her shoulders. What she really felt was a cocktail of exhilaration and fear. Here, in the aftermath of the flames, she was starting to find her voice. "Sarah," he continued, "that was brave, what you did back there." She shrugged, brushing off the praise, though warmth spread through her at his compliment. "I couldn't just stand around. I had to do something." But even as she spoke, she felt a nagging thought surface. Was bravery what she had found, or was it simply foolishness spurred by desperation? Mrs. Jenkins approached them, her frail frame trembling, eyes wide with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "I thought I would never see you again. You're a hero, dear." The words hung in the air like a weight that was both comforting and overwhelming. Sarah knew she hadn't done this for accolades. She had done it for the people she remembered from her childhood, the faces that had blended into shadows as she recoiled from her past. "So what happens now?" she asked, glancing from Mrs. Jenkins to Jake, both of whom seemed equally uncertain. Would this ridiculous moment of bravery become the bridge she needed to reconnect? Jake shifted closer, clearly contemplating her question. "Well, we'll have to organize a community effort. Make sure everyone has a place to go, especially those who lost everything." "But how?" She could feel her heart pounding again, a reverberation of the fire that still danced in her consciousness. Now that she had ventured into the flames, was it time to step out of her own shadows, too? As layers of fear began to peel away, she felt a resolve welling up, born from the chaos and the courage she had just discovered. "Let me help," she said, her voice firmer as it echoed from the depths of her being. "I can talk to them. Ease the worries, be a face they recognize." Jake's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of respect lighting them. "You've got a passion for this, Sarah. Just remember, it's going to be messy. People will be hurt and anger might come out, but we can face it together," she finished for him, a newfound clarity settling over her like a soft blanket. As they gathered with the neighbors, a sea of faces bearing a story, Sarah thought of the photograph still tucked inside her pocket. It was a connection to her father, a tether she needed to explore. She could no longer ignore the part of her life woven into that image. As the sun began its descent, casting an orange glow over the chaos, Sarah's gaze lingered on the rising tendrils of smoke. It painted the sky with shades of past fury and present determination. But what she didn't expect was just how deeply her father's legacy would pull her back into the heart of a community filled with tangled stories. Just as she was beginning to root herself in the present, a figure caught her eye in the crowd, someone who looked too familiar. Could it really be him? The person she thought she would never see again? Sarah squinted into the fading light, her heart racing as she tried to make sense of the figure emerging from the throng. The crowd began to part, and with each step, the unmistakable features began to emerge: dark hair and a familiar smile that seemed as alive as the flickering flames they had just fought. "Is it really you?" she whispered, her breath hitching in her throat. The figure stepped closer, and her disbelief turned to shock as recognition hit her like a tidal wave. It was Daniel, her childhood friend, the one who had left without a word, the one whose absence had hung like a shadow over her life. "Sarah," he breathed, grasping the moment as if it were thin air slipping through his fingers. His eyes were wide, pleading for a connection that had been left dormant for years. "What are you doing here?" she managed, struggling to steady her voice, the noise around them fading as if they were the only two left in the world. She felt 100 emotions rise at once, confusion and joy wrestling in her chest. "I heard about the fire and came back to help," he replied, his voice laced with sincerity. "I never thought I'd see you here, like this." She felt the weight of unspoken words creeping in, memories tumbling forth like leaves caught in a gust of wind. "You just disappeared. I thought you were gone for good." "I know," he nodded solemnly. "I was running from more than just the town. I thought I'd find what I needed out there, but I lost my way. Seeing the community hurt like this, it pulled me back." As Sarah looked into his deep brown eyes, the hurt from the past started to fade, replaced by something that felt a lot like hope. "We're trying to bring everyone together again," she explained, gesturing towards the crowd that still bustled with discussions and plans. I want to help." His gaze shifted, taking in the scene around them, and a determined smile appeared. "Then let us do it together. Whatever this town needs, we can provide. Together." The thought made her pulse quicken. After so long apart, could they truly rebuild anything? Could she brave the daunting shadows of her memories and share the burden of the task ahead? But as he stepped closer, a sudden hush fell over the crowd. They turned to look, and Sarah followed their gaze, her heart sinking. A woman in a red coat emerged from the shadows, a stern expression painting her features. She was someone Sarah recognized from her past, a symbol of the divisions that had once torn them all apart. "Is that really what you want?" The woman's voice cut through the air, icy and sharp. After everything? Shock rushed over Sarah. It was hard to tell if the woman's accusation was aimed at her or Daniel. But what did it matter? Memories of mistrust and betrayal loomed around them like an unwelcome fog. Would they ever truly heal those wounds? With the weight of those questions hanging in the air, Sarah squeezed Daniel's hand. "We can't let the past define who we are now," she asserted, her voice shaking but firm. "This is our chance to rise together." As the intensity of emotions swirled around them, a flicker of understanding passed between Sarah and Daniel. Yet, the challenge lay ahead, and the townsfolk's eyes reflected uncertainty about a future they never expected. Would their shared resolve be enough to bridge the ever-widening chasm of distrust? As the crowd murmured, Sarah could feel the sting of doubt creeping back, the weight of history reluctant to loosen its grip. "Ready or not," she whispered softly, "here we go." And just as they prepared to step into the thick of it, she felt a heavy nudge of dread at the back of her mind, reminding her that the battle for this community and for herself had only just begun. Would they be able to face the ghosts of their past? Sarah's grip tightened around Daniel's hand, a lifeline in the growing tension. The woman in the red coat stood there, a specter of their shared past, her expression unreadable as she surveyed the crowd. Her presence seemed to amplify the existing whispers, the air thickening with questions and doubts. "Who are you to claim we can fix anything?" the woman asked, her voice ringing with accusation. "You ran away the moment things got tough. And you," she turned to Sarah, "you've always wanted to play peacemaker. But there are wounds here that don't just heal because you decide they should." In that moment, Sarah felt the wind shift, the collective breath of the crowd holding on her words. They were waiting, hungry for reassurance but wary of the bitter truth. The sound of distant sirens echoed, reminding them of the chaos left in the aftermath of the fire, the very thing that had brought them together again. "We don't have to forget the past," Sarah began, her voice gaining strength. "But we can't let it chain us down. If we come together, come together." The woman scoffed, crossing her arms. "What do you know about unity? You think just because you're back, everything will change?" Daniel's eyebrow raised, his irritation palpable. "We need to start somewhere, and we can't keep pointing fingers or we'll never move forward." He stepped forward, his presence steady, even in the face of this storm. Sarah felt the warmth of his words light a fire within her, feeding off the hopes of everyone around them. "You lost everything too," she said softly, addressing the woman directly. "What do you want for this town? For yourself? Maybe it starts with us trying to work together." The crowd shuffled, the flickering flames of their hopes reflected in curious eyes. Sarah could feel the tension in the air, like charged electricity, as old rivalries curled back into the shadows of their taste for intervention. Would the woman let her past dictate her present? After a sharp intake of breath, the woman seemed to waver. "You really believe that?" she asked, her steely demeanor cracking slightly. "You think that unity can blossom here?" "It's at least worth a try," Daniel responded with open sincerity. "We've all suffered losses. But it's in that pain that we can find our strength to build something better." As mundane sounds of the evening softened, the flickering flames near the remnants of the town structure burned bright, illuminating the faces of townsfolk caught in between. Their gazes swayed between Sarah, Daniel, and the woman, their silent pleas rippling out like waves. "Maybe," the woman began, a whisper like the wind dying down. "Maybe there's a way to do this, but it all depends on whether we can accept our past together." Sarah's heart felt buoyed by the possibility. "It starts with you and me, right now. If we can stand united, we can show everyone that trust can grow again." With each heartbeat echoing louder, she looked into Daniel's eyes, seeing both fear and resolve, and then back to the woman, who appeared torn by her own internal conflict. The question lingered in the air: would she accept the bridge being offered, or would she retreat back into the dark corners of history? "Take a step forward," Sarah urged delicately. She felt the weight of anticipation from behind. "Let us call it a beginning." As silence enveloped them, the tension dared to break. Would the bonds of the past hold fast, Or could they begin to weave new threads together? Just then, old voices of dissent emerged from the crowd, a reminder that not everyone would be ready to embrace change. As Sarah glanced around, she sensed more challenges lurking, eager to disrupt the fragile peace they were attempting to forge. What will happen now? She wondered aloud, her heart hammering in her chest. Would they face those voices and overcome the obstacles ahead, or were they walking into a deeper divide? The moment hung heavy in the air, the murmurs swelling like a tide ready to crash. Sarah's heart raced as she looked around the crowd. Faces filled with doubt mirrored the unease brewing inside her. She was acutely aware that they had very little room for error and an even thinner margin for trust. The woman in the red coat seemed to absorb this tension, her sharp gaze flicking from Sarah to Daniel. You think you can just walk in here and expect people to forget? To forgive? Her voice was a whip crack against the budding hope around them. Some of us have scars that will never fade. You think you can just erase our past? Sarah swallowed hard. She could feel Daniel's hand tightening around hers, a comforting reminder that they were in this together. No, she said finally, steadier than she felt. I don't believe we can erase anything. But we can choose to not let those scars determine our future. She took a step closer, willing the crowd to see her sincerity. Isn't that worth fighting for? A ripple of acknowledgement flowed through the crowd, but not all of it was supportive. A gruff voice broke through. People don't just change overnight, Sarah. It was Matt, one of the residents who had lost everything in the fire. His brow was furrowed, anger etched on his face. You think we can trust you after you turned your back on us? Matt, Daniel interjected, raising his voice gently to calm the growing storm. Trust is earned, not given freely. Just like the love for this town. We know it'll take time. But it has to start somewhere. The tension thickened as more voices joined in, some in agreement, others still conflicted. Sarah felt a weight settling on her shoulders. What if we all shared our stories? She proposed, heart pounding. What if, instead of shouting from our corners, we came together and shared the pain we felt? Maybe that's how we begin to understand one another again. The murmuring shifted, a few nods of agreement surfacing alongside skeptical frowns. It felt precarious, like walking a tightrope during a storm, but it was a start, a possible thread to weave them back together. Let us do it, the woman in red said, surprising everyone. But I want to stand up here with you. I want people to hear my story, hear why I've been holding on to this anger. Her voice softened, but the resolve remained firm. My name is Clara, and I lost my home too. I was angry, too angry to see anyone else's struggle. Clara's admission was like a key turning in a lock, the rusted barriers around hearts slowly beginning to yield. Others stepped forward, drawn by a shared desire to find healing in their pain. Sarah breathed in relief as stories started to intertwine, voices rising and falling like the tide, fragile yet filled with purpose. Each narrative was a piece of the puzzle, giving shape to the past as they pushed toward an uncertain future. At that moment, the crowd began to change. The wall of dissent crumbled ever so slightly as honesty cast shadows on old resentments. Sarah caught Daniel's eye, her heart swelling. This was what they needed, the beginning of acknowledgement, the first steps toward collective healing. But just as the spirit of unity started to warm the crowd, another jarring voice echoed from the back. And what about the truth behind the fire? A young voice shouted. Are we really going to just ignore that? The room stilled. Sarah's stomach knotted as she realized this was not over, not by a long shot. The past was far from silent, and the truth, whatever it might be, would soon push its way to the forefront. What does that mean? Sarah asked, dread pooling in her chest. The air felt electric again, bound tight with a new tension as eyes turned toward the unknown. What were they about to uncover, and would it tear apart the fragile truce they'd just begun to forge? The silence was thick and heavy, pressing against Sarah's chest like a weight she couldn't shake off. She scanned the faces around her, many drawn tight with anger and confusion, while others wore the troubled expressions of those who had endured too much. The confrontation had shattered the moment, and now darker shadows loomed over their gathering. Who said that? Clara demanded, her earlier tenderness replaced by a challenging fire. It was as if she was reclaiming her role, anchoring the crowd's focus back toward the heart of the matter. Carly, Matt murmured, flipping a glance to the back of the room. A hesitant figure emerged from the throng of people, her face lit with a mix of defiance and fear. The young girl stepped into the flickering light, swallowing her insecurities and showing courage well beyond her years. "We can't just act like everything's okay," Carly said, her voice steady but soft. "What happened that night? It wasn't an accident." She shook her head, and her wild hair danced around her face. Maybe some of us need to know the truth about who actually caused the fire." Sarah's heart pounded violently in her chest. What Carly was suggesting hovered like a storm cloud over them, dangerous, unpredictable. "You know what happened?" Sarah asked, desperation lacing her tone. "Please, if you know something." Carly took a step forward, emboldened by the rising tension around her. I heard my dad talking to some guys a few days before it happened. They were in the garage late at night, and I heard them mention." She faltered for a moment, her courage wavering. I think they were planning something." Gasps rippled through the gathered crowd. The weight of Carly's words hit Sarah like a tidal wave, and she could feel the air shift. It was as if the truth had been unleashed, an untamed animal set free to roam amongst them. Matt took a step back, disbelief written all over his face. "You can't be serious," he breathed. "That doesn't make sense. Why would anyone do that? Who would be so cruel?" "Sometimes," Sarah interjected, her voice trailing off as memories of that awful night flooded back. Shattered glass, flames dancing in the darkness, people screaming. "Sometimes people do unforgivable things out of desperation." A sense of urgency hung in the air as Clara turned to Carly, her eyes sharp. "Are you willing to tell us everything you know?" This was the moment to give shape to the chaos, to not allow fear to dictate their future any longer. Carly nodded, her resolve growing stronger. "I have to. I can't just sit back and let this slide. We all deserve answers. My dad told me to keep quiet, but this is bigger than us." Sarah felt a spark of hope, but also dread. Perhaps Carly was right. Maybe this revelation could be the catalyst for healing, not just of the community but for each individual. "Then let us find the truth together," she said, her voice steadier now, but another voice rang out before she could finish, sharp and accusatory. "And what if the truth only brings more pain?" A figure from the crowd emerged, pointing an accusatory finger straight at Sarah. "What if this town is better off with its secrets?" Tension crackled in the atmosphere like static before a storm. The future of their fragile alliance now rested on a knife's edge, one step away from either uniting them further or tearing them apart completely. "What do we do now?" Sarah breathed, looking toward Daniel and the others. They faced a line drawn in the sand between truth and the comfort of ignorance. Would they stand together to confront the secrets of their past, or would fear drive them back into silence? The path forward was uncertain, and every heart held a different answer. As eyes pondered the future, Sarah felt the weight of history pressing upon her. This was the moment they had to decide. The room buzzed with noise, voices rising and falling, creating a chaotic murmur. Tension hung in the air, thickening as uncertainty gripped them all. Sarah glanced at Carly, whose fierce determination shone through her youthful features, and then at the crowd, a mix of hope and fear in their eyes. "Let us just think for a second," Matt said, his voice rising over the unrest. "Do we have any proof? We can't act on nothing but whispers." His apprehension resonated with many, faces tightening as doubt seeped in, but Carly stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise. "People can't keep running from the truth. The fire didn't just affect us, it changed lives. I can't stand by anymore." Her conviction swept through Sarah like a gentle gust, stirring something deep within her. "Carly's right," Clara interjected, her tone firm. "We can't just bury this. We have a choice, stay afraid of the truth, or face it together." You think it's that easy? Someone shouted from the back. Sarah couldn't really see who it was, but the bitterness in the voice was unmistakable. What if we dig and end up revealing things we wish we hadn't? The indecision settled heavily over them, like a cloud blanketing a clear sky. Sarah felt the weight of memories, the laughter, the warmth, the community that had once thrived here before that fateful night. It all seemed tinged with the smoke of the past. What about the people we've lost? She pressed. What about the ones who are still suffering? Carly fidgeted, her hands trembling at her sides. I don't know all the answers. But I know that hiding won't fix anything. If we don't start asking questions, we'll be forever trapped in this silence. Their surroundings seemed to close in as Sarah took a deep breath, trying to quell the chaos swirling in her mind. What if we form a small group? She suggested. Nothing big. Just a few of us who talk to Carly and get to the bottom of this. We can gather information, and if it looks dangerous, we decide as a team on how to proceed. That idea hung there for a moment, allowing flickers of hope to spark in eyes across the room. A few people nodded, surprise evident on their faces. Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady. I'll join. If Carly's brave enough to speak up, the least we can do is listen. Okay, Matt hesitated, clearly conflicted. But we need to involve only those who want the truth. I don't want to force anyone into this. As people began to murmur, the air shifted once more, transforming from bitter uncertainty to an unexpected excitement. The prospect of digging, of revealing hidden layers of their past, electrified the atmosphere. Then another voice emerged, soft but resolute. Count me in too. It was Angela, usually quiet, but her eyes sparkled with unexpected determination. Sometimes, the past can teach us what we need to know to move forward. A sense of unity began to knit itself together, threading through those who had previously felt lost. Sarah's heart raced. They didn't just look like a group, they looked like a team ready to reclaim their narrative, but just as relief washed over Sarah, a chilling thought crept in. What if they uncovered something that couldn't be undone? What if digging deeper buried them all under the weight of secrets best left hidden? Sarah felt a shiver down her spine. What had they just unleashed? Together, they stepped into the unknown, but how far would the truth take them? The question lingered heavy in the air as they gathered their resolve, hearts pounding, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Would the past finally yield its secrets, or would it clench them in its vice-like grip? As they moved out of the meeting hall, a soft drizzle began to fall, the droplets dancing on the pavement. Sarah felt the coolness on her skin, a stark contrast to the warmth of the camaraderie they had just ignited. The decision didn't come without apprehension, but there was something exhilarating about having a purpose. She could still see the determination on Carly's face, and she held on to that image like a lifeline. Let's South meet at my place tomorrow, Sarah suggested, glancing at the others. We can brainstorm and start making a plan. Good idea, Clara chimed in. We'll need to gather what we know first, maybe make a timeline or something to connect the dots. Maybe we can even draw out the locations, Daniel added, trying to keep the atmosphere light. You know, for dramatic effect. Matt chuckled, but his smile quickly faded. Just remember, be careful. If we stir the pot too much, we might attract the wrong attention. His words hung in the air like the smoke they all remembered too well. It was a reminder that some truths came at a price, and Sarah felt the heaviness return. She looked at Carly, who seemed lost in thought. Are you okay? She asked softly. Carly nodded, but her eyes told a different story. I just can't shake this feeling that we're opening a door that wasn't meant to be opened. Her voice trembled ever so slightly. What if we find things that put people in danger? We can handle it, Sarah reassured her, though her own heart was pounding with uncertainty. We'll stick together. No one has to face this alone. As they parted ways, Sarah walked home with a swarm of thoughts buzzing in her mind. She replayed the meeting with each step, trying to reconcile the excitement with the fear. The world outside felt muted, as if it was waiting with bated breath for what was to come. Once inside her small apartment, she watched the raindrops race each other down the windowpane, a familiar pastime. But tonight, she found little comfort in the simple pleasure. Her mind drifted back to the memories they were starting to unearth. They weren't just remnants, they represented lives intertwined with joy and sorrow, laughter and loss. She sank onto her couch and reached for her journal, jotting down her thoughts. What if the truth exposed years of buried pain? What if people didn't want to remember, or worse, wanted to silence them? Every sentence felt heavy as she tried to articulate her roller coaster of emotions. Yet, amid the uncertainty, she also found a flicker of hope. Knowing their purpose might lead them somewhere new and liberating, her pen paused, hovering over the page. What do I really want? Is it closure? Justice? Her heart quaked at the thought. Just then, a loud knock at the door startled her, the kind that demanded attention. Sarah's breath quickened. Who could that be? As she opened it, the sight almost took her breath away. A shadow loomed, drenched from the rain. It was a familiar figure, but there was something urgent and wild in their eyes that made her stomach drop. Sarah. We need to talk. It's about the fire and what I found, the person gasped, attempting to catch their breath. What had they stumbled upon? The air crackled with an electrifying tension, and Sarah knew in that moment, there was no turning back. Come in, she whispered, heart racing at the implications of what this could mean. The answer to so many questions was standing right in front of her. But what had they unwittingly unleashed? In the heart of a rain-soaked night, Sarah's mind raced with the weight of the storm and the weight of the secrets they now sought to uncover. She gestured for the figure at her door to enter, her heart pounding like the relentless rain against the windows. It was Clara, her face pale and drawn. Sarah, it's worse than we thought. I found something at the rubble of the diner, Clara gasped, pushing soaking hair away from her face. I didn't want to believe it, but there were signs that this fire was set on purpose. We have to consider what this means. The gravity of Clara's words sank in like a heavy stone. Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. What do you mean, set on purpose? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Her instincts screamed at her to retreat into the safe cocoon of ignorance, yet she stood firm. We need to know. We need to begin unraveling this. Yes. Clara's voice quivered in urgency. There were matches in the debris, and I overheard people talking about someone who wanted to see the diner gone. It's all connected, Sarah. We need to share this with everyone, but it's going to shake things up. They might not believe us. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the storm within her. Fear and exhilaration battled for dominance. Would this revelation ignite the flames of anger and mistrust again, or would it bring about the healing they all desperately needed? We have to be careful. We have to tread lightly, she said, feeling the weight of responsibility growing heavier on her shoulders. But we can't hide from the truth. It will catch up with us eventually. With Clara at her side, they spent the night digging into the tangled web of secrets that clung to the embers of the diner. Each piece of information, each rumor, stitched together a darker narrative that had remained hidden for too long. As dawn broke, painting the clouds with a tentative light, they resolved to take their findings to the group gathered in Sarah's living room, alongside Daniel, Matt, and the others. Tension simmered. Clara stood with a determined candor, her voice steady as she explained their discovery. We believe the fire was set intentionally. We have to discuss what that means for our community and for the healing we're trying to achieve. Murmurs rippled through the group, incredulity mixed with fear. We need proof. Matt exclaimed, the hesitation in his voice stark against their emerging bond of unity. What if this is just speculation? Do we really want to push that narrative? But Sarah raised her hand, silencing the whispers, her resolve flooding her with courage. Matt, we're not here to point fingers or divide. We're here to uncover the truth and ensure nothing like this happens again. We owe it to everyone who suffered. Trust us. Her eyes swept across the room, locking onto each person's gaze. Would they stand behind her, reluctance softened, replaced by a brittle acceptance of their collective pain? And then a small voice emerged from the back of the room. "I want to help." It was Carly, her youthful face alight with newfound purpose. "Let us gather evidence together. We might find out who's involved. We can't let fear silence us. We need to honor those who have been hurt." Encouragement fanned the flames, reclaiming the space once filled merely with grief. They all began brainstorming, assessing their next steps like soldiers preparing for battle. Hours turned into days as they pieced together testimonies, struggling with the ghosts of the past. Sarah felt herself transform amid the chaos, no longer the girl yearning for acceptance but a woman ready to confront the challenges that loomed over her community. Each meeting felt like unearthing buried treasure, the kind that might just shine light on the shadows of mistrust that had long lingered in Maplewood. Their search led them to dusty archives and whispered tales of resentment in the town's history. Then, one day, pulling the fragments of evidence together, Clara approached with trembling hands. "I think I've connected it. Sarah, I found records people who had reasons to want the diner gone because it represented more than just a business, it symbolized everything that was lost." Despite some initial setbacks, they received the support of a few brave townsfolk, eager to lend their voices and memories to the truth long since shrouded in silence. Time flowed like water, and with each revelation, Sarah felt her tightly wound heart begin to loosen. As a team, they felt like a tapestry of resilience being rewoven. The community's healing might finally emerge from the ashes of distrust. What if, on the other side of this inquiry, a new Maplewood emerged? With hope rekindling in her chest, Sarah stood atop the dusty mount where the diner once thrived, her friends at her side. They were a collective force now, determined not just to heal for themselves but for the generations to come, and as they stared at the spot, feeling the stir of community beneath their feet, the laughter, the warmth, and the support that candlelit days had brought them, they dared to think they might break the cycle of hurt. This was their chance to truly unite. With renewed determination, they pledged to revive Maplewood, but urgently needed support. If you felt the transformation, this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your engagement makes a real difference. Comment your reactions and feelings about Sarah's incredible journey in the face of adversity. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this extraordinary transformation from despair to hope. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting this community through these actions.